This is Titus Frost, spitting truth, causing glitches in the Matrix. Welcome to Illuminati Space Wars Part 2, and today we're going to be covering the X37B, the GSSAP satellites, and the Chinese Quantum Communications Satellite. Alright, let's kick things off with the Illuminati launching their GSSAP satellite on top of a AF-SPC-6 Delta IV rocket, and today it's going to launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, creepy surveillance satellite to the rescue. And this satellite has the ability to go into the geosynchronous orbit, and there's 4 or 5 others of these GSSAP satellites, and they have the ability to attach themselves to basically any other satellite and hack into them, so therefore making anything in the space hackable by these as they just hook up to them. And these have the ability to be highly maneuverable in the geosynchronous orbit, therefore making everything in the geosynchronous orbit a target for them. These were just launched, and the premise behind them is that they are communication satellites. I'm sure that's what they're really doing up there. So there you go, the GSSAP satellite launch, and now there's a whole bunch of these in space in the geosynchronous orbit doing who knows what, because all of this is tied up in black operations.
We got our hands on the launch keys, countdown to destruction. We don't want these monkeys meddling in the way of us settling here. So let's gear on up and wipe clear, wipe. Destroy all humans, 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 destroy all humans.
So maybe they're not up there to wipe out all the human race, but they're probably up there to be able to hack into other satellites and to surveil other countries' surveillance satellites. And they're basically positioned in the geosynchronous orbit because that's where the vast majority of government surveillance satellites are. The project was developed covertly, and the identity of the satellites was a secret until the program was declassified in early 2014. However, exact specifications and details on the program remain classified, so we don't really know what the GSSAP satellites are up there doing. That's why I say we have to speculate. The GSSAP satellites provide a space surveillance network sensor collecting space situational awareness data that is used for accurate characterization of man-made orbiting objects. And basically it's up there to spy on surveillance satellites used by foreign governments. Here's just another interesting article I found on spaceflight101.com, and I found it interesting because they called the GSSAP satellites spacecraft right in the first paragraph. And it says they're spacecraft that provide situational awareness, and they're called satellites by everybody else, but because they're so maneuverable, you could probably call them spacecraft, as they are the most maneuverable surveillance satellites ever created. So the article continues on discussing how maneuverable these are by saying the weight is relatively small, 650 to 700 kg, but they carry a significant amount of propellant to make frequent orbit adjustments and perform station-keeping maneuvers. And then later in the article it talks about how they could use this for intelligence gathering and for monitoring satellites, and how it's built to fly just above other satellites at relatively the same speed. So basically these GSSAP satellites, in my opinion, are built to link up to other satellites and hack into them. Like, you know, maybe that Chinese quantum satellite that just got launched. Maybe the US already had an answer for that before it even got launched. And it's not completely out there for me to say that, because this article alone even states the electro-optical sensor aboard the satellite will provide valuable data to be able to track the optical signatures, movements, and other activities of geostationary satellites, to learn about their identity and study their activities. Sounds like it's a spy satellite hooking into other spy satellites to me. Next up, for manned maneuverable spacecraft that could hook up to other satellites or other space platforms and allow the occupants to hack into them, we have the super secret X37B. Shh, don't tell anyone. It's top secret. No one even knows this exists, except for me and everyone else with the internet. So let's see what they are willing to admit the X37B does on the internet themselves. And I give you the Illuminati puppets.
Now, here's your Pentagon Channel report.
The Air Force is set to launch America's newest and most advanced unmanned re-entry spacecraft Thursday from Cape Canaveral, Florida. The X37B is an orbital test vehicle intended to provide experts with a flexible test platform to conduct experiments in space. The Air Force says the craft will also allow satellite sensors, subsystems, components, and associated technology to be efficiently transported to and from the space environment. The Air Force Undersecretary for Space Programs said the X-37B is an important step in the effort to make space access more routine, affordable, and responsive. He also said the craft will be folded into development programs that will provide capabilities for our warfighters in the future. The X-37 program was originally a NASA initiative and is now led by the Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office.
So I hope you caught that, and here you can see the launch of the X-37B. And basically what he said there is this thing started out as a NASA program and then transitioned over to the Air Force. So that's how this stuff works. NASA is just a front for the military, and the military gobbles up all the technology and all the funding that's supposed to be used for a civilian space agency and ends up going to be used for military programs. And that's why NASA is all fake, because NASA is just a front for the military, and it always has been. Operation Golden Lily was the start of the secret space program, and that was when they went out and took all the gold from the Pacific, and no one knows about it because everyone talks about Operation Paperclip, which was the Atlantic version where they took all the scientists. Well, in the Pacific, they took all the gold, and it was called Operation Golden Lily, and that's how they funded and started funding the secret space program since the end of World War II. So getting back to the X-37B that you can see here, and we're going to talk about why they want this. Well, they want this because they need a way to deliver operational personnel in space, and they need it to be maneuverable, and they need it to be able to come back. So that's what this is. This is a miniaturized version of the space shuttle that they're going to be using for putting operational personnel into space. You know, people that, military personnel that can hack into other satellites, that can do anything they want to do out in space. This is the secret space program. This is what they really do this stuff for. This isn't just to launch more payload out to the ISS or some benign thing like that. This is clearly, and that's the reason it's secret, because only evil needs the cover of darkness. Goodness can be put right out in the light of day, and these guys are doing all this stuff under a secret program because this is a militarized space vehicle. And at this point, if there are any absolutely moronic flat earthers watching this video, you're probably thinking, oh no, don't keep going too high, you'll hit the dome. Yeah, just keep watching the video, because you're gonna see, I'm gonna just let it play and stop talking. You're gonna see by the end of this a round earth in the background, and all of you flat earth people are just absolute morons. This is the stuff that they're actually doing. Military space programs. This is what they don't want you looking into. Go ahead and look into that other psyop nonsense all you want. I'm going to keep investigating the truth and what's actually going on and relevant. And there you go. The round earth right in the camera screen as I'm talking about it. The end of that argument.
2.5 Gs in preparation for fairing jettison. Engine continues to throttle as expected to maintain 2.5 Gs. Parameters looking good. Coming up on payload fairing jettison. Everything looking good. Getting ready for fairing. We're at fairing set. And CFR deck has jettisoned as well. Engine is throttling back up to 80% rated thrust, right as expected. Vehicle's operating normally. We've started boost phase chill down. We're now entering our constant 4.6 G acceleration phase in preparation for shutdown. Everything looking good. Coming up on shutdown. Boost phase chill has terminated as expected. We have cutoff. Booster engine cutoff coming up on staging. And we have stage separation. Everything looking good. We have pre-start on LOX and fuel. Ignition, full thrust. The RL-10 is up and running normally. Good start signature. Operating parameters for the RL-10 look good. Vehicle continues to fly right down the center of the range track.
This is Atlas Mission Control.
So there you go, the Boeing X37B, basically a transporter for military personnel into space, has been launched, and you can see it for yourself. And basically there's a ton of speculation regarding the design and purpose of this because it is a partly secret space program and it has a huge cockpit for carrying things up. They're saying it's just for equipment. And we all know that they love to lie, and I'm pretty sure it's not just for equipment, it's probably for personnel, like everyone else thinks. And of course, they've done 3 of these launches already, so there's at least 3 of these in the sky with OTV-1, OTV-2, and OTV-3. And as you've had 3 OTVs, you got 3 different variants. You got the X37A, X37B, and the X37C, and those are just the ones that we know about. And for proof that they put classified information and information that's not known to the public into video games and entertainment before it's released, this Call of Duty game was released November 5th, 2013, and you can see clearly the X37B, and it was used to deliver military personnel in the video game, and the video game was released a full year before that information was declassified. So there you go, proof positive that the entertainment industry is putting stuff that the public does not know into things to pre-program the masses. And you can clearly see from the depiction that the quote-unquote experiment bay in this thing is quite large and completely empty. And I'm sure they've utilized that space for, I don't know, something, maybe personnel. And to go with all this, cue the space war propaganda. So get ready, America. Russia and China have space weapons too. Here comes the Cold War in space to fund the central bankers who fund both sides of every conflict. Admiral Cecil D. Haney, commander of U.S. Strategic Command, told an audience, "Adversaries and potential adversaries are developing and in some cases demonstrating disruptive and destructive counterspace capabilities. Furthermore, they are exploiting what they perceive as space vulnerabilities, threatening the vital national, civic, scientific, and economic benefits to the United States and the global community." Russia's 2010 military doctrine emphasized space as a crucial component of its defense strategy, and Russia has publicly stated they are researching and developing counterspace capabilities to degrade, disrupt, and deny other users of space. And to not be outdone by the Russians and the Americans, the Chinese are trying to catch up and trying to copy what everyone else probably already has, because that's what the Chinese do best, and copyright doesn't translate into Chinese. So the Chinese have decided to launch their own communication satellite, this one being a quantum communication satellite, and they're claiming it is unhackable. Now, that right there is the dumbest argument in the history of mankind. Anything built by man can be hacked by man, including this quantum communication satellite. So let's just end that nonsense right off the bat. Furthermore, as we've already discussed, the GSSAP satellites are basically built in order to hook up to something like this quantum entanglement satellite so that they can spy on anything in space. Even if the communications are unhackable, the satellite itself and the hardware isn't.
China has successfully launched the world's first quantum satellite, quantum experiments at space scale, or QUESS, blasted off from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwestern Gobi Desert earlier today, and the 600-plus kilogram satellite roared into the sky on top of a Long March 2D rocket. QUESS will circle Earth once every 90 minutes after it enters a sun-synchronous orbit. In its 2-year mission, QUESS will try to establish hack-proof communications using quantum technology. And the satellite is nicknamed Missiles after an ancient Chinese philosopher and scientist who's credited as the first person to conduct optical experiments.
And here we go. Here's another article from the Chinese talking about how hack-proof their satellite is going to be, even though the U.S. already has a whole bunch of GSAP satellites up there that could easily hook up to this thing and steal all the data off of it. So this Chinese satellite's going to fly around for 2 years, and it's going to use quantum entanglement, which is basically what happens when two particles are separated. No matter how far apart they are, the other one reacts at the same time. And basically, you can, as long as you can't connect to one or the other end of the quantum communicator, you can't intercept the stuff. So you would actually have to connect to one of the ends. But connecting to one of the ends is still possible. So therefore, this thing is not unhackable. That's just a total lie. It says many nations would like to have quantum communications, but China is the first country to actually launch one of these quantum communication satellites. At least the first one to launch one that was declassified anyways. So this article is all about how there's a new Cold War in space, and it starts with how the last Cold War ended in '85, but in early 2000s and in 2007 with China's ASAT missile test that a new Cold War has developed. So since the early 2000s, space has become highly militarized, and leading the way is the United States, and the United States and government agencies have at least 500 satellites, roughly, and they're roughly twice as many as all the rest of the world combined. And the article later reads, observing and tracking other countries' satellites is a passive and essentially peaceful affair, but the United States military also possesses at least six, we've covered them, the GSAP and the X37Bs, spacecraft that can maneuver close to enemy satellites and inspect or even damage them. And the article reads on about how the X37Bs are highly maneuverable and can be used to attach to other satellites, and then it reads on later that the U.S. is also developing even smaller 500 kg satellites that are extremely hard to detect and highly maneuverable and could provide, surprise in wartime. So what we very clearly have going on since about September 11th, 2001 is a arms race in space that got kicked off again. And you can see here, after the 2007 Chinese anti-satellite missiles, the United States showed off its Enroll anti-satellite missile in 2008. So it's just another Cold War where both sides are being funded by the same bankers, and they're just building up more arms and ammunitions to wipe us all out with. Just an idea. Maybe we could all realize that war is a giant waste of money and technology, and divert all of this effort and all of this technology and all of this money and just energy and intuitiveness into things that actually help society instead of killing each other. And if you thought the war propaganda train was over, you just don't know this media. This article, America's far-off hypersonic weapons freak out Russia. And this is all about a simulated event where the United States launches 1,000 hypersonic missiles at Russia and wipes out 80 to 90% of their nuclear capabilities and their military capabilities before they even have time to respond. And yes, hypersonic weapons are a very scary idea, and they probably already exist if they're talking about them in the media and putting them into video games like the Rod of God weapon in Call of Duty Ghosts. So let's continue on with this article and see why the Russians are so freaked out and see what this freak out has caused. And the reason Russia is so freaked out about this and has restructured their entire armed forces and their air force into an aerospace division is because they know that nuclear war was never really a possibility because of the implications that would happen afterwards with all the radiation. But hypersonic weapons pose a different threat. They're just as damaging to an enemy's infrastructure as nuclear weapons, yet there's no nuclear fallout left from them because they're just kinetic weapons, thus making the likelihood that someone would go ahead and fire these off much higher than the likelihood of someone firing off a bunch of nukes. Because if you fire off a bunch of nukes, basically everyone on the planet is going to be biting the dust. But if you launch a bunch of these hypersonic weapons, you could literally cripple your enemy just as if you had hit them with nuclear weapons, but not have the nuclear fallout and the radiation killing you and everyone else on the planet with them. And these hypersonic weapons are not that far off and probably already exist, because what you're looking at is a declassified prototype of a X-51 Wave Rider. And this is a Mach 6 hypersonic missile. And this is getting pretty close to what they're talking about. So we're not that far off for having hypersonic space missiles and hypersonic space kinetic weaponry like the Rod of God, if it doesn't already exist, which I'm pretty sure it does because of what happened in Tianjin, China. And we should probably get to that in the next episode of Illuminati Space Wars. We'll cover the Rod of God weapon in Tianjin, China. This hypersonic weapons program is part of what's called Prompt Global Strike by the Pentagon. And this is what Russia is absolutely fearful of, and it caused them in 2015 to restructure their entire aerospace group. And they've even talked about bringing back the MiG aircraft and other things of that nature. So the Russians are totally freaking out about these space programs. In fact, Russia is so freaked out about this that they are threatening to tell the rest of the world where all of the US military satellites are. And even though I would love to know that information for my research, I'm pretty sure that's going to cause the US military to do something that may lead to war if Russia does give out that information. And this article reads on talking about how NORAD currently is the authority on what's up there in space, and they use a variety of basically NATO countries' surveillance systems to do that. And Russia is claiming that it has a database that it would like to make public for everyone that has 40% more debris, that would be satellites, than what NORAD is claiming. So they're saying there's 40% more satellites up in the sky than what NORAD is telling everyone. And if there really is that many military space satellites up there, that's a pretty scary thought to me, to be honest. That's a lot of military technology that they have up in space already. And the Russians are claiming that their surveillance of space is far better than the United States, and the United States is leaving itself open for a quote-unquote space Pearl Harbor. And of course they're putting that in because the powers that be are using this new Cold War in space to push for World War III, just like they do through every other media source they have, as if we need some war between America and Russia for some unknown reason. However, let's just be honest, when it comes to war in space, the US currently has the edge. And when it comes to military spending, they far outspend any other country, and we have no idea how much they spend on the black operations, so we really have no idea how big this edge is. This article just continues on, and John Hyten talks about how if you knocked out all the surveillance satellites and you knocked out GPS, how we'd all be going back basically to World War II settings and combat. And that's a pretty worrying thing, which is I'm sure why they have so many secret satellites up there and secret technology, and they probably have stuff way further out in space than the geosynchronous orbit, because if you just launched an EMP attack into the geosynchronous orbit, you could wipe out pretty much everything there. But if you had something much, much deeper out in space, you know, where no one else could find it, and it could launch back at Earth from there, then you'd really have something, because then you'd have a piece of technology that no one else could take out, and you'd have the only weaponry in space. And despite all the calls from all the Call of Duty fans to come out with a less futuristic version of Call of Duty, they're shoving space warfare down their fans' throats deep and hard. Which is why the Call of Duty Infinite Warfare trailer is probably the most disliked trailer on YouTube and has millions of dislikes, because it's basically a rip-off of Halo and Destiny, and all of the fans can easily see that, and they're calling it out. And the Illuminati just keep pushing their space warfare games on us no matter what we want. So it's not about marketability, it's about them pushing an agenda. And just the last thing I wanted to cover on this video tonight was the LRSB Long Range Strategic Bomber Program and the development of the B-21 Long Range Strategic Bomber. So let's watch a video on that new bomber and we'll talk about it after.
Chief, do you think anyone here might be interested in seeing a new bomber for the 21st century? Really seeing it? You think there's any interest? You guys want to see it? All right then. All right then. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to give you a bomber for the 21st century, the B-21. There it is, the B-21. So we have an image, we have a designation, but here's what we don't yet have. We don't yet have a name. And this is where I am challenging and I'm calling on every airman today. We want our active duty, our National Guard, our reserve, our civilians, our family members. We'd like all of you to give us your best suggestions for a name for the B-21, America's newest bomber. And in so doing, we hope that you'll take the opportunity, and we're going to try to facilitate this for you as well, so that we can all learn more about the important role that this platform is going to play against the real threats that we will face as the United States of America with our allies and partners around the world in the future. Together, we're going to lead our Air Force, our military, and our country into...
And there it is, the new B-21 bomber program. And they were asking for names for this new bomber, and I thought the truther community could come up with some really good ones. And yeah, their little naming contest is over, but the comment field on their YouTube video is still open, and there are 0 comments in the comment section, so we could just go there and totally dominate it with all our names and ideas that we come up with. So if you have some good ones, go drop them there or drop them in the comment section on mine, and I'll go do it for you. And the name I came up with for it is the Nobel Barack Bomber for Peace and Sunshine. Just like in the photo they have of it, this bomber only brings peace, just like Barack Obama, and sunshine. So always remember, if freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. And don't be afraid to call these guys out on this type of creepy technology they're building and having all of us being tricked into building for them to kill ourselves with. We shouldn't be scared of them. We have already beaten them if you believe in Jesus Christ. And there's nothing that they can do to us anyways. So don't be afraid to speak out. And if you have some funny ideas for what to call that thing, don't be afraid to go put it in their comment section. Thank you for watching, and peace everyone. I'll be back shortly. This is Titus Frost, spitting truth, causing glitches in the Matrix.